Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting through all that polarized political noise to look at the actual, hard facts of the recent U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding. After a super tense 3-month war, the dust is finally starting to settle. Well, at least on paper. But man, there is a massive gulf between the political spin we're hearing and what the actual text says. So let's untangle these facts together and see what's really going on.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The surrender debate. 2. Inside the interim agreement. 3. What the deal left out. 4. Ongoing regional conflict. And 5. The next 60 days. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The surrender debate. Decoding the political messaging. Now, the absolute juxtaposition here is wild. We've got two completely different realities being projected to the world about the exact same agreement. Let's look at the U.S. side first. President Trump has been taking some heat from critics who are calling this deal a surrender, but he completely dismisses that, insisting it's actually Iran that surrendered unconditionally. His argument? That they came to the table out of sheer desperation. He flat out claimed, they are finished. They get no money, not 10 cents. But wait, directly opposite that, you have Iranian leader Khamenei claiming it was actually the American president who acted out of desperation, pulling out all the stops just to force this deal. It's a massive gap between the rhetoric and the reality. So, who actually got what they wanted?
Let's jump to Section 2, Inside the Interim Agreement, the facts on paper.
When we totally strip away the spin and just look at the core concessions, it's pretty revealing. Yes, Iran makes a major commitment to never produce nuclear weapons. But in exchange, the agreement explicitly states that Iran will get its frozen assets returned if it complies.
And that brings us to a huge $300 billion point. This brilliantly highlights the factual contrast to that whole not 10 cents claim. The agreement explicitly sets up a massive $300 billion investment fund for reconstruction in Iran. To put that into perspective, the sheer size of this fund is exactly why critics are arguing these terms fall way short of the unconditional surrender that was promised.
Moving right along to Section 3. What the deal left out, the missing pieces.
First off, we have to remember what we're actually looking at here. It's a memorandum of understanding. Basically, that means it doesn't have the legally binding teeth of a finalized permanent treaty just yet. It's a starting point, a draft, designed to hit pause on the fighting while the real, heavy details get hammered out.
Because it's just an interim draft, it is honestly staggering to see what gets completely deferred. The fate of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile? Deferred. There are absolutely no explicit restrictions on their ballistic missile or drone programs. And it totally fails to specifically mention Iran's powerful proxy networks in Iraq, Gaza, or Yemen.
That is a far cry from the massive list of objectives laid out at the start of the war. Remember back on March 2nd, President Trump promised to settle for nothing less than unconditional surrender. The stated goals were huge: prevent a nuclear weapon, achieve regime change, degrade missile and drone capabilities, dismantle those regional proxy networks, and, as he put it, blow up all the nuclear stuff. As we can see from the text, almost all of those concrete goals have just been kicked down the road to vague future negotiations.
Let's look at Section 4. Ongoing regional conflict, the chaos on the ground. If we trace the rapid sequence of events from those initial late February airstrikes to today, the diplomatic fallout is everywhere. Technical talks in Switzerland have been postponed, and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance even had to suddenly cancel a diplomatic trip because of fresh strikes between Israel and Lebanon. The terrifying reality on the ground is that even with an official ceasefire in place, the proxies are basically operating completely independently. Experts point out that the U.S. seemingly lost control over Israel's actions, and Iran appears to have lost control over its proxy in Lebanon. When the proxies take the wheel, any promise of lasting peace feels incredibly fragile.
Finally, Section 5, the next 60 days, a pause, not a peace.
President Trump actually admitted he negotiated this agreement largely to prevent a global economic depression. But to put the resulting deal into context, listen to John Eighth from the Center for Arms Control and Nonproliferation. He hits the nail on the head, noting that agreement is a really strong term here. In his view, the only thing they actually agreed on is that the war shouldn't keep going right now. There's been zero progress on beating the 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal.
So, these next 60 days, they are a ticking clock. Diplomats have an absolutely monumental task ahead of them. They have to figure out how to take a vague promise about nuclear weapons and turn it into a concrete settlement. They have to navigate this ongoing, highly dangerous proxy violence happening right now between Hezbollah and Israel. Basically, they have to settle the actual core issues that sparked this whole 3-month war in the first place.
And that brings us to the ultimate question. With domestic rhetoric flying in total opposite directions and bombs literally still threatening the Middle East, we have to ask, can this single piece of paper actually cool the fires of a decades-long conflict over the next 60 days? Or are we simply looking at a fragile, temporary pause before the storm returns? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the facts. I'll chat you next time.